Since Elon Musk, with Donald Trump's full support, destroyed the United States Agency for International Development, researchers estimate that the resulting cuts to global health programs have contributed to at least 780,000 preventable deaths worldwide, most of them children. Elon Musk has now repeatedly denied that the dismantling of USAID caused anyone's death. Elon Musk has now attacked New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof for listing the names of real people who have died as a result of the destruction of USAID. Nicholas Kristof wrote this to Elon Musk. Emma Freeman was a 23-year-old woman who died in childbirth because you stopped paying for the diesel for ambulances in her part of Liberia. I talked to her parents and sister in their village. Gebese Kiadu, age 1, died of malaria because of your cuts in Liberia. I talked to his mom in her village. Ibrahim Karoma, an infant, died of AIDS in Sierra Leone after you interrupted HIV supplies. I talked to health workers who cared for him. Akol Deng was an 8-year-old girl with HIV in South Sudan who died when you cut funding for the healthcare worker who provided her medicines. I talked to him. Our next guest, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and former USAID Administrator Samantha Power, wrote, according to Boston University's Global Impact Counter, which tracked deaths attributable to the cuts until it stopped operations in February 2026, an estimated 781,000 people died preventable deaths in the first year, including 518,000 children. Global child mortality, the number of children who die before their 5th birthday, rose in 2025 for the first time in 35 plus years by 200,000 additional deaths. USAID saved more than 3 million lives a year at a cost of less than $10 a month per American. That is what was destroyed on purpose. Joining our discussion now is Samantha Power, former ambassador to the United States Agency of International Development, the director of the U.S. Agency of International Development, former ambassador to the UN. She was President Obama's ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Power, thank you very much for joining us here tonight. It seems like Elon Musk has just recently heard that anyone died because he took food away from starving babies.
Well, I guess there's some perverse good news in the fact that this is finally getting under his skin. I mean, these projections were available from the very minute he began slashing these programs, he and Doge, backed by the president, and nothing stopped them. They didn't ask these kinds of questions about what the human consequences would be when you interrupt medical services, when you deny people access to food that in many cases was sitting in warehouses that had already been purchased thanks to the generosity of the American people, or when you shutter a pharmacy and basically block people from getting access to meds that they can see on the shelf inside the door. None of those questions that are being posed here in June and July of 2026 were posed in January, February, March, April, when those programs could have been maintained, even pending a good faith review as to whether this administration wanted to continue those programs. That's not the approach that was taken. There was no regard for the human lives at stake whatsoever.
The way Elon Musk went about this and the people working for him went about this, as reported in the new book, Into the Wood Chipper by Nicholas Enrich, who was inside at the time, clearly shows that they didn't have any idea what USAID actually did.
No, I think, again, recounted by so many of the staff that I had the privilege of working with, whether in print now or just as one commiserates with them, the questions were wild. Believing these kind of fringe conspiracy theories that began to go viral in part because Musk himself was amplifying them using the Twitter platform that he had bought. but they seemed to really believe the misinformation diet that they were consuming. And so one of the questions that was posed consistently in meetings, I gather, and this is after I left, of course, was, aren't you just an agency that carries out abortions? Mm-hmm. It is illegal for the taxpayer resources at USAID to be used to fund abortions. But they were shocked when they actually heard, no, in fact, this is an agency that had prevented 25 million people from dying of HIV, or this was an agency that had helped electrify 150 million homes so that kids could read late at night after the sun goes down, or hospitals didn't have to rely on generators to perform surgeries, for doctors to perform surgeries. They were shocked, but nobody seemed willing to present that information to Musk at the time. Musk himself was uninterested. This was an ideological rampage, a fever dream, an expressive act to show that they could tear down such a critical part of the United States government and such a critical part of American soft power and American national security interests abroad.
They couldn't have done it without a Republican Congress completely collapsing in any defense of USAID, which used to be, and very much under President Bush, George W. Bush, a bipartisan support system for USAID.
Yeah, that's particularly heartbreaking. I mean, in some of my last testimony before Republican-led committees, I had Republican senators or congressmen saying, we think you should have more resources. This agency should have more resources to educate more girls, to provide more food to malnourished kids, more American food even. You know, a lot of these are red state operations where the wheat and the corn make their way to the hungriest people in the world. And those same individuals, when Musk came along with that big information megaphone, they were so afraid of standing up to him or to the president that they just looked the other way. I would note, and Lawrence, maybe you have tracked this, but the Republican-led House and Senate as recently as February of this year, passed a $50 billion foreign assistance bill, which would have included about $20 billion to USAID, were it still functioning, for programs in public health, in humanitarian assistance, in food security. So the constituency is still there. They're just terrified of poking their heads up in the face of this misinformation machine.
Ambassador Samantha Power, thank you so much for your work in this endeavor, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for keeping this alive, Lawrence. It's really important.
Thank you.